Had nightmares virtually all my life, but the nightmares then just got more extreme. I couldn't handle it.
Can you talk about those nightmares briefly?
I used to have, from the ages of about 12, 13 onwards, I used to have nightmares of running away from something chasing me. One of the one I used to have was tearing my face off so I couldn't be recognised and trying to hide. Another one which I had very, very vivid, I can actually remember in detail to this day. I was about 13, I think I had with this one. I was hiding in a compartment in a train, and I knew it was pointless hiding because I knew there was something in my head which meant that they'd find me, they were tracking me. And
what
then
made you think about that? What brought that on?
I have no idea, it came in the dreams, but in the dream they actually started drilling through my head. And so I woke up in terror because they were actually drilling into my third eye. And it was very, very, my nightmares, very, very vivid nightmares, violent ones. And when I got to my late teens, I never used to remember my nightmares. I used to just wake up, bolt upright in bed screaming. It was quite shocking for my boyfriend at the time.
This is painful, and I don't want you to...
I've done a lot of work on this.
You've done a lot of work?
Yeah. I've done a lot of point holding, and I've done a lot of works on some of this stuff.
Okay, so you've had these traumatic experiences.
Very traumatic dreams. And, very traumatic experiences. So by the age of 22, I was 22, I actually went out and I started taking drugs. And to be quite honest, I lost, I think, about 8 years of my life, and there was very strange things happening then. It's strange. I did start off taking acid and it never did anything for me. It just took me to a place whereas I was more centred, actually, and I used to be more aware of the energies around me, but I never hallucinated. I only hallucinated once on acid, and I can actually honestly say the night I hallucinated, I'm not actually convinced I was hallucinating because I saw my partner with a skull face over him, and then 2 years later he died of cancer, so I'm not exactly sure that I was really hallucinating that night. But it felt like hallucinating. It was really quite shocking.
So the bottom line is, if you've been taking drugs, how have you been able to make the distinction between your higher spiritual awareness and being able to see remote viewers and things?
This is actually, I gave up drugs and I stopped them all in my late 20s. I had an experience where this is where I really lost it. My partner at the time had just died of cancer. And I was actually involved with some very, very bizarre controlling people.
Can you talk about those?
Yeah, I can talk about them.
What do you mean by bizarre controlling people?
Well, things were happening like I'd want to go away for a weekend with a man and my passport would go missing. People would be interested in pursuing friendships with me and all of a sudden they would disappear, and I would find out later, some years later, what they'd been told to make them disappear. They were very controlling. These people were actually controlling my life and who I mixed with without me being aware of it. But this is actually while I was living in the home of this particular person that I actually saw the alien by the bed. But I knew I was spiraling out of control. I was going into severe depression. I was having panic attacks. At this stage, I'd started having voices in my head. I was going to a total and utter breakdown. And then one night I had an experience where I was virtually like I was separate from myself, and the me that was outside me looked at me and said, "You change something now, because if you continue the way you're going and you don't decide you want to live, you will die tonight." And that night I actually had a very violent row that finished my relationship with my then boyfriend, which involved throwing bottles around the kitchen. It was very violent, and it could have very easily have ended up in severe violence. But that night I actually I decided I wanted to change something. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. I wanted.
Do you think your partner at that time was influencing you in your...
Well, he was feeding me the drugs and selling me the drugs and stuff, yeah. And he was a very, very bad boy. Yeah, very bad boy. He was involved in drug running. He had contacts in the IRA and stuff, yeah, so it was quite bad. After that, when I decided I wanted to live, that's when the voices in the head started. And I would have one voice telling me that I was useless, I should kill myself, and the other voice saying, no, it's fine, ignore it, it'll go away, ignore it, you'll be fine. And in the end, I decided I'd just have to still up, because at this stage I'd actually just bought the house next door to these controlling people. I was working in sales, and so I sold my house and I went over to stay with my mother, who was in Spain, which is where I ended up going on the Camino to Santiago and meeting my husband.
And you're saying that then the husband was not... It was not an apparently random event.
No, it wasn't. I was totally and utterly obsessed about being here, here, and here at particular dates. This is where we had to sleep. This is where we had to sleep. The other parties, members
you mean
of the party,
specific hotels?
Or specific refuges, yeah. Because there's like hostels on the Camino. You pay very little money to stay in there overnight in the dormitories, and everyone eats together. So it means where you meet people. You really do interact. And I was
had to
convinced,
stay at particular ones.
Yeah, I was totally obsessed with it.
Now, you were obsessed with it?
No, I was obsessed. Yeah, it was me. I was totally and utterly obsessed. Now, actually, strangely, I mean, there were very strange things happening when I first went over to Spain. For instance, I was thrown downstairs by an unseen being just after I arrived.
Just the old sort of being thrown downstairs by the unseen being.
It was really, I mean, this is sound really cookie, but I went upstairs one morning to get, because I lived in one part of the house, my mother lived in another. And I went to get breakfast in her kitchen, and I had a voice in my head saying, be careful on the stairs. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm always careful on the stairs. I went up the first flight of stairs carrying a bowl of cereal and a glass in the other hand. And at the top of those stairs, I had another voice in my head saying, be careful on the stairs. So, yeah, I'm half asleep here and I'm pissed off. I'm fine. I can climb a set of stairs. I got to the top of the stairs, and there were marble stairs, 8 flights, and I suddenly felt this push in my chest, and it was like a push. And I fell downstairs. I smashed the glass. I smashed the bowl. I dislocated my knee. I've still got the scar. I've got a great big rip in my
femur?
In my leg, on the front of my leg. And apparently I was squealing like a slaughtered pig.
Well, any kind of injury to the thing is to shin bone is pretty.
And my mother came running, and my immediate thought was to put my hands on my knee to try and stop the pain, because I was in so much pain. And I had the voice in my head saying, move the glass that's under your skirt. I was like, I'm there in agony, squealing apparently like a pig. So I actually lifted my dress, and there was a shard of glass that long that was actually stuck at the base of the navel. If I'd leant forward, I would have actually disemboweled myself on it. And I thought, hang on a second here. Maybe this voice is actually trying to look after me here, because this is pretty full on. So obviously I removed the glass. This is... I actually put the knee back in place by using healing. I mean, I actually felt it shifted. Because the voice told me what to do with the knee. But it was... And then
this was a learning experience for you.
Very serious learning experience for the healing, yeah.
So to
listen to the voices in my head.
Some people call them spirit guides.
Well... This is it. I call it spirit guide. Yeah, I think it's my guardians looking after me, because for the horrible things that have happened, something's been looking after me, and I truly believe that this, for me, I'm not a victim of anything that's been going on. I really believe that on a spiritual level, I have chosen this for some kind of learning experience to maybe step into my full potential, but I have to realise that I have to wake up to it.
And is this part of the process you're going through now?
I think so, yeah. It's not a comfortable process, and to be quite honest, it's a hard thing to say. I'm not going to say that it's right to be abused. It's not right for anyone to do that to another person. However, I do believe on a soul level there are particular things we do allow.
So could you go over that again, on a soul level?
Yeah, on a soul level. Look, I do not believe for 1 minute any individual who comes in to this world comes in with the intention of being hurt, abused, messed with and controlled. However, I also believe that the soul, the human soul, is something that's very remarkable, very strong, and that there are particular experiences that it allows, it has happened because it sees things on an overview, not like we do. We live in the moment, we live in the experience, you know, we react, we cry, we feel pain, we're there, you know, identifying with the emotions, whereas the soul will see a slightly higher perspective. The day that I actually was told, right, okay, now it's your time to move out of this, either you choose to live or you're going to die, I believe that was my soul talking to me. I believe that was my soul saying to me,
right.
Look, Sam, you're hurting yourself. You're acting like a total and utter prat here. You're destroying yourself. This isn't why you came here. This isn't the reason you're here. You know, you've had your experiences. You've had your shit. Now it's time to wake up. It's time to take control of this. I actually found that every place I lived was close to a large underground military alien stroke base, which I find a little bit strange.
So can you list those bases off?
Well, there was the one in the Brecon Beacons, and then there's the Ashburton one, because when I was 4 we moved to Holsworthy. We only lived there for about a year, but that's near the Oakhampton, large military base at Oakhampton. But I've been assured...
That's in Devon, isn't it?
That's in Devon, yeah.
And there are reports of activity happening there today in the modern era.
Yeah, I saw 3 orbs only
in fact,
2 years ago.
It even features in, I think, Colin Andrews' new book. And there are people who go down and photograph stuff and orbs and energy beings. And that's near Dartmoor. That's
Dartmoor, yeah. In fact, I live there now, which is really quite strange because I've ended up going back there. But I now live the other side of the moor. But when I was a child, I lived the military base side. But apparently, James has told me there is a large UFO come military base. It's called the Ashburton base, which is under Dartmoor.
Now, when you say told, have you been speaking to him, or
not face to face like this? I actually I connected with him after meeting Matt, and I connected with him on Facebook actually, and then after the connection, I sort of checked in and I'd read bits and bobs, and he started talking about Ashburn, so I messaged him for some more information. So he obviously messaged me back with the information I wanted, but. So
what messages did James Casbolt give you about those bases?
Well, he just told me there's the large military come alien base under Ashburton. That's all he told me. He wouldn't actually give me any more information than that. Not that I pushed it, because to be quite honest, I'm aware that James is a bit of a public figure. I'm sure he's got lots of issues going on in his time, and it's nothing that is that pressingly important. If there's a base there, there's a base there. And
what other bases were you beside?
The one in France. There's a big one in France as well. I'm trying to remember which mountain it's under, but I was within 50 miles of that. It's just down from Toulouse on the French and Spanish border. I lived there as well for 6 months.
Just be careful of your microphone.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. So could you just say that again? You're in France?
In France, yeah. After Holsworthy, we moved to the French Pyrenees. It's quite... We lived, I would say, just sort of off from Andorra. It was just down below Toulouse. And apparently there is another big alien military base there as well.
Is that on the French side or the Spanish side?
I think it's on the French side. But I think it's basically on the border. It's under, I'm trying to remember, Mount Perdido. Near Mount Perdido.
And what evidence, or any activity happening there that would suggest there's an alien base there?
I was there when I was, 5, 6 years of age. Now, I can tell you, my brother and I were very peculiar in that time. We used to torture Cindy down in the cellars of the chateau at the ages of 5 and 3, respectively.
You tortured Cindy dolls?
Yeah. We used to torture Cindy dolls.
Now, that's on the one hand, that's a bit of a joke.
I told you, this is where I was saying about the violence and there's a lot of very uncomfortable things that I remember from my childhood, which I thought was perfectly normal, but when you think about it in adult life, it really isn't normal for a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old to take Cindy and Action Man down to the cellars and have Action Man torturing Cindy.
Do you think that's based on an actual memory?
I really don't know, but I do know that my little brother, from at the ages of 4 onwards, he can't remember any of his childhood. He can't remember anything at all. He has got a lot of trauma.
And what trauma did he suffer from?
Well, he has no memory. He had memory loss when he was growing up until, so the normal, the bedwetting, thieving, lying. This sounds as if I'm being disrespectful to my brother. It's not, because my brother's a beautiful, beautiful person. He just had a lot of trauma. And I spoke to him recently about the stuff I was finding out about the marriage, and I wanted to talk to him about our childhood. And he said to me, I know something really, really wrong was going on. He said, but I don't want to go there. Sorry.
Okay, we'll just take a little break now.
Sorry.
No worries. We'll take a little break. Okay, Sam. Yes. Let's get down to the business of the alien stuff that you've experienced. And you've had traumatic experiences in the past. You had a military husband, and you lived in Spain. Yeah. Now, let's just finish off the military husband in Spain. What's the significance of that, and what eventually led to your divorce?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first I'd tell you a little bit about the history of Pontevedra, which I think is quite relevant to the alien stuff. Pontevedra during the Second World War, Vigo actually, there's an island in the rear between the two that was used by Nazi submarines.
Now, where are we at the moment?
In Galicia.
Galicia, okay.
In Galicia, between Pontevedra, which is the city where I lived. Now, Pontevedra has a large naval academy just down the road. In Pontevedra itself, there's the large rapid reaction military base. And just up the road, we have Ferrol, which has got one of the biggest naval bases in Europe, and a nuclear power plant. Now, Pontevedra itself is actually well known for its UFO activity. Many people I know have seen orbs. People who live there have seen.
Orbs are quite different to alien spacecraft.
No, they think it's spacecraft because it sort of is coming off there's an island which is a no-go zone in the rear. That's the sort of, the piece of water that comes in to the inlet of Pontevedra, because Pontevedra is literally on the coast. The coastline is very much like the Norwegian fjords.
Right.
But the areas that come in are called the rears rather than fjords. And so there's an island there.
So these are deep gorges in the ocean, so they're deep and
they are quite deep. They have all the mussel beds and stuff there. They grow all the mussels there. The water's very, very clean. But there's an island in the rear there which belongs to the Navy. You don't have any permission.
Is this on the Atlantic side? Just before, we'll be able to see this on a map, but it's on
this is on the Atlantic side, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's tidal.
It's tidal, yes. And the orbs have been seen coming off there, like lights coming off from there.
But how long has this been going on for?
Well, one of my friends, she said it was going on with, her childhood. Everyone knows about it.
I mean, are we talking about something that's been going on since the war, before the war?
I would
last 20
naturally,
years?
I would say at least the last 30 years.
So it's, I mean, it hasn't even been, has it been happening for centuries?
I don't know, because I didn't research it that much. I mean, it was just something that she said. To be quite honest, while I was living there, I was actually quite shut off about everything. Now I'm actually quite shocked that I didn't do more research, but it was almost as if I was...
I mean, this is something maybe after recording. I mean, it's very important. There's places in Norway which have got fjords and things, and that kind of activity has been going on for a very long time. So I was just wondering if it's a similar form of perhaps natural phenomena, or if it's something since World War II or before World War II.
Well, say the Nazis did use those fields for the submarines used to come in there. My closest friend, I said, I didn't have many friends while I was there. I made one literally about a year before the divorce.
So how long did you live there?
8 years. Yeah, I had 3 friends. 2 of them I actually made. One after the divorce, the other one about a year before the divorce. So
your husband brought you there, and then essentially you didn't leave or move around or do anything? We
went to Valencia when he was... he actually changed his job to become officially intelligence. So we moved over to Valencia, which is actually where things really did start breaking down.
You were essentially the wife of a Spanish intelligence officer?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what branch of the intelligence did you find out he's in?
Well, he ended up... I don't know. I really don't know. He ended up going over to an intelligence unit. I know that he was training to fly the drones over in Afghanistan. He was being trained by the Israeli military.
The military.
The Israeli military were training the Spanish troops how to use the drones over in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so I mean that's not a huge deal.
No, it's not a huge deal.
But it just means
field,
it's military, and
but it's intelligence. It was military field intelligence.
Yes.
So he was still in uniform.
So
however,
what happened then?
Well, so with Pontevedra, said the experiences started happening. I told you about the bruises, the holes in my navel, the mark. Actually, was told the mark of the scar I had. Well, the rash thing I had on my arm. I was told later by a nurse that it was actually consistent with the reaction to a intravenous drip, where they have the actual, they have like a little tap thing.
Yes.
There, a lot of people react if they've got sensitive skin, and it comes up like a circle and triangle. And she said the actual shape I described was totally consistent, and the location with an intravenous drip. Now, to my conscious knowledge, I've never been in a hospital on an intravenous drip.
So this all happened to you when you moved to Valencia?
This was happening while I was still in Pontevedra. While I was in Pontevedra, I also started having a lot of very heavy psychic experiences. For instance, I would wake up in the morning, I would go to the bedroom door to go to the bathroom, open the bedroom door, but I couldn't open the bedroom door. I'd realise I was out of body, so I'd go back to my body, I'd try to wake up, I'd wake up, I'd go to the bedroom door. Yeah. I actually found it extremely disturbing, because when I did finally wake up, which took me 4 attempts to actually get my body to wake up, I spent the whole of the day feeling totally and utterly fractured. It was just totally disorientated, confused, out of it. I also had experiences where I'd wake up in the night and I was looking at a parrot I had hanging over the bed, the toy parrot. I'd be there, or watching on one occasion I was watching a little, it was like an energetical little ball of light that was running, because I had a 4-poster bed. It was a metal 4-poster bed, and there was this like little energy ball running backwards and forwards, and I was there just watching it. Until I realised that, well, we shouldn't really be hanging there in mid-air watching this ball. I had orbs come in as well, and then I had extremely vivid dreams.
Yeah. What was in the dreams?
Right, the ones I remember, there was one. It was like in the future, but it was totally lucid. Everybody was microchipped. There were spacecraft flying around.
What type of spacecraft can you describe?
Little spacecraft, little triangular things. Just flying around is like normal little low-flying aircraft, as if they were perfect, but nobody else could see them. Only I could see them, but I was aware that I wasn't chipped. I was aware that I was on public transport going into the city where I wasn't allowed to be if I wasn't microchipped. The train was a little futuristic, but not particularly. It had sort of like the glass top, and there were the seats were in threes. So it was a case of you couldn't rush to get off. You had to. It was quite controlling, you know. You had to wait for other people to leave first. There was no rushing around. And you had to put your baggage, all bags, you weren't allowed to have bags on the seat with you. They had to be put on bag areas. And I was aware in the dream that I couldn't find my bag in the baggage area, and I was thinking, well, if I don't find it soon, I'm going to get caught without a microchip getting off. And if I'm caught in the city area using public transport with a microchip, it is actually forced microchip. That is the penalty. But I was looking out the window watching these little craft and thinking, nobody else can see them, and I was aware it was because they were microchipped. That's why they couldn't see them. Their perception was totally dimmed down by the chips. There was another one. It was virtually the same. I was, again, in a town, and everyone had gone outside in great excitement because the United Nations government were unveiling their space station, which was visible from the Earth. And I was there getting really angry and frustrated because it wasn't a United Nations space station, it was an alien space station. I knew it was an alien space station, but everybody else was eating up the propaganda that was being fed to them, and it was as if I was seeing a future. I felt, I was in the future, watching a future, and getting very, very frustrated because nobody seemed to know what the hell was going on.
Jesus, that would be easy if I just got up and did this. The details of the...
They were very, very vivid. I was there. It was not like a very dreamy dream. It was totally and utterly lucid. And said I had 3 of them all at the same time, all concerning the future, the same time period. One to do with the microchipping, and I was walking around not chipped, aware that if I got caught not being chipped, I would be in really big trouble. The other one, I said I was watching a space station coming in, and it was as if I was watching 2 large alien spacecraft docking, and they were trying to claim that
start
it was,
this thing again about the United Nations. It was a United Nations.
It was a
spacecraft.
United Nations, but it was a United Nations government. It was in the dreams. We were under the One World Order. One World Order had happened. I mean, in the dreams, but
it wasn't a UN spaceship.
No, it wasn't. It was alien. It was alien technology. In the dream, I was absolutely.
What made you know?
I just knew. I mean, to quite honest, when I woke up, they were like triangular spacecraft, and there were 2 of them docking, and people were being fed that it was a UN space station. And I was like, well, for God's sake, that's not even in space; it's in our atmosphere. We can see it clearly. They were massive things. And I'm saying, we haven't done that. And they were like, and in the dream I was thinking, this has taken a couple of years to create. This is an alien spaceship. They're trying to sell bull crap to the populace, excuse the French. But that's how I was perceiving in the dream. It was very
When did you have
these
vivid dreams?
This was the same time as I was getting I had the holes in the navel and the burn mark.
Now this was in Spain, Valencia?
This was in Spain, in Pontevedra. I was still in Pontevedra.
So this is when?
This would have been, between 6 and 7 years ago.
So around about 2005?
Yeah.
Maybe 2004?
Yeah. And I had the real feeling, when I woke up, I was absolutely convinced that I was seeing a future possibility. I've really felt that I had been in the future and seen something that was supposed to be happening.
So these vivid dreams happened at the same time that you had these marks in your arms?
Yeah, I had another one at the same time, and this was actually in a way I found it the most disturbing, because I felt that after the dream, I felt that I'd been spying. You had been spying? Yeah, in this dream, after I came back, I actually felt that I had been spying. And I felt very, very uncomfortable, because, again, in the dream, it was the same time period. Everybody was microchipped. There was a United Nations government, and there was a meeting. There was a guy who he was part Chinese and part Italian. His name was Tony Wan. It's very, very vivid. It was like I knew him. He had a restaurant, and after hours in the restaurant, he used to have meetings because he was playing two sides. He was ex-mafia.
So the Chinese restaurant was actually operating as a front.
Basically a front, because he was actually running underground freedom meetings, and people were going in there to try and see what they could do about the situation.
And this is still in Spain?
This is while I was in Spain. I was having these dreams.
With your husband?
I was with Manu, yes. Yeah. It was while I was still married. At the same time, so it would be in 2005, 2006. Yeah. And the dream was that I had been allowed into this meeting by Tony's daughter. Everyone was vetted. I'd gone in with two other people. I was sat at a table, and it was a closed group, and Tony was explaining that there were alien snipers. There were beings who were actually taking out people who were advocating freedom. Anyone who was talking out against the state in any way was actually being assassinated.
Now, what do you mean by alien snipers?
Well,
how do you know they were alien? I mean, were they
Tony was saying...
What type of alien were they?
Tony was actually saying that these beings were not human. They were aware of people by their energy fields, and we had to be very careful, because they would know if you were a dissident because of the energy you were giving out, because you would not be in like the hive mind. Yeah. And he was saying we had to locate and recognize, and he was going to teach us how to locate and recognize these beings.
Now, you meant, who is this guy, Tony?
I don't know. His name, in the dream, his name was Tony Wong. He was leading some kind of underground movement. But he was... Have
you ever met a person like Tony in reality?
Never. But say in the dream, it was in the future. This is why I said I felt as if I'd been spying, because I'd been sat there and he was listening, and I was listening to all the preparations they were making. And then he came to the part of how to protect ourselves, to make sure that our energy was actually invisible to these
So how
assassins.
Was that done? How do you make your energy
I don't know, because at that moment my alarm clock went off and brought me out of the dream. Now, I don't think I was actually dreaming, because number one, I don't set an alarm clock. I never set an alarm clock unless I actually have a specific meeting to make. How there could be an alarm clock, I don't know. It was because when I woke up, I was in total and utter shock. And it was at the one point that would have actually been of any use to me. The information I was getting was of use to somebody else, not to actual me.
So let's make it very clear. In order for you to not be detected by the aliens who are running the country, you must...
shield your energy.
Shield your energy field.
Because
at
then
the moment,
we
don't know how to do that.
No. I'm still trying to find out. I mean, I've tried meditation techniques to try and go back into that space. And it's... I don't know, but I'd say it was perfectly clear the way to do that is you have to shield your energy, because if they see that your energy isn't resonating with the hive, then you're a dissident and you are a potential target, which is unfortunately what seems to be happening in America now. But
I think it's happening in more places than America. So how are we going to... How do we move from there to your divorce and
right with the divorce
and Matt Todd and how you got here?
Yeah, what actually happened? So I started having these very, very vivid dreams. My marriage appeared to be wonderful, apart from the bruises and the sickness and the headaches and the confusion and all the rest of it. Anyway, my mother had been living in the south of Spain, and she moved up to Galicia because she wanted to be close to me.
Yeah.
And she had been quite ill. And a friend recommended that we brought her over to see Peter, who's a healer down in Devon. So I did that. He sorted out her immediate problem within an hour. I was so impressed, I decided I wanted to train with him. So I went back to Spain with all the details, not knowing how on earth I was possibly going to train with him. He had a 2-week body electronics course that was running in that summer. So I actually got offered a 2 weeks' work that would give me enough money to do this course, and my husband was away on an exercise. I thought, fantastic, brilliant. So I did this course, but when I came back from this course, I started noticing little things that just didn't seem to gel right within my relationship. You know, I started noticing the control elements. Anyway, I let it ride because I thought, well, maybe what's happening is I'm just coming into my own power, you know, and I'm having a bit of a... Anyway, I then managed to persuade my husband to allow me to go on the shamanic healing course that this guy was running.
Now, your husband was, of course, actually very pro this. He
was quite happy because he actually thought that, you know, I was going to be bringing home goodies in a way because... And the first 2 weeks, although, you know, it was showing, highlighting stuff to me, I actually kept it hidden. And he actually only saw me having far more energy and being more positive, which was good. Then we actually moved to Valencia. And Valencia, we were living in a military residence. It was like a hotel. I had one room we were living in. I was like that for about 3 months until the divorce. And he was doing more and more exercises, and when he was coming back from the exercises, I noticed that he was changing quite dramatically. But what had actually happened in the meantime is, while I'd been doing the shamanic work, I'd started getting really, like, questioning about these bruises and the things that were going on, and actually what my husband was doing. So I started doing a bit of research. As I had a laptop, so I started going online. And I noticed one of the things they were saying about scars, and I noticed that when my husband came back from these courses, not only did his attitude change and he became even more controlling and really argumentative and like turning into a monster, he was also having these more pock marks, more acne scars down his back, which I thought, this is really bizarre. What the hell's going on here? And it was almost as if, like, as I was doing the shamanic work and I'd been doing the point holding, it was like veils were being lifted from my eyes and I was seeing things that were there all the time, but I hadn't noticed.
So those marks were always on his body?
Well, some of them, yes, but they were more. They were breeding. He had breeding marks on the back, on his back, little scoop marks, which are consistent with some of the stories of, like, the scars for implants, etc. Now, I thought this was quite bizarre, but then I actually started noticing other little things, such as the control, his behaviour becoming very odd. He started lying, as in I actually started catching him lying, like quite blatantly, and I started getting very, very disturbed about what was going on in what he was doing within his job, etc., and his relationship to me and where I was fitting in with the job. Then I actually started noticing, believing that the room was bugged. Now, it might sound like paranoia, but I'd have a conversation with my mother telling her that I was very uncomfortable about Manu's behaviour, etc. And then it was almost as if he referenced it later on in the week, as if he knew about the conversation. And then one occasion, he did tell me that 2 floors down there was an industrial espionage unit. So one day I actually ran into one of the guys from the unit. He came into the lift with me as I was going down to leave the building. And what was bizarre was, whereas normally you actually stand in a lift and you're with somebody else, you're very polite, you might smile, but then you look away or whatever, you know, you do your own thing. He was actually stood with his back to the door so that I wouldn't be leaving the lift, and just staring at me, like very, very intensely. I actually felt that he knew everything I'd been saying to my mother, and all the complaints I was making about the military and about my husband's behaviour and my doubts and my fears. I was going over, is this paranoia? I was thinking, well, no, this man's behaviour is not normal. You don't behave like this. I actually felt he wanted me to know that I was being watched, I was being monitored. And then I started seeing strange things in the street in Valencia, like on one occasion coming back from running, there was sounds really odd, there was a gentleman who was right outside the residence before I actually got back into the residence, and he actually stopped. He sort of stopped virtually in front of me, and he actually turned his head to one side and looked at me like that, with his head on one side, almost like a bird. Yeah. And he stood there staring at me. And then as I went past and I was sort of looking at him thinking this, he actually he moved around and followed me with his head to one side, staring at me. I was, you know, totally and utterly baffled. But then, as I said, then the crunch came when I decided that the lies were getting too much. The behaviour, the control, everything else, there was something very wrong. And I actually said to my husband, I needed some time out to actually see where things were going, because I was going into panic. Something was very, very wrong. And I decided to go to England for a week for a weeks-long ayahuasca ceremony, because I believed that would actually help me see what was going on, actually help me get through the trauma, so to speak, because I was behaving and acting like somebody who was in a level of trauma. I mean, I realised my behaviour was becoming very, very odd, but I was noticing my husband's behaviour was very, very odd.
So essentially, you were noticing really strange things.
Yeah, really strange things. I mean, it's
very interesting what you were just saying there about the person who looked at you like that. I've seen that behaviour before. It's like they turn the head almost vertical.
Yeah, it's like a bird.
Yes.
It's like, yeah. It was
Did
very,
you notice
very
anything about the person's eyes?
Very, very dark. Very dark. Very dark. I don't mean it was dark outside. Their eyes were very dark, but very light. But a lot of light in them as well. It's hard to explain.
How can you have light, dark eyes?
There were very dark eyes, but there was a lot of energy. They were very piercing, very alert, a lot of intelligence. You know, if a man in the street did that to you, you know, you'd think, well, it's some kind of loony who's lost his mind. There was a very acute intelligence coming out of the eyes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't get the feeling I didn't get the feeling that he was a lunatic. I got the feeling there was a very, very piercing intelligence that was scrutinising in a very objective way.
So that would imply that they knew that you knew.
Yeah, we saw each other. We clocked each other.
Yeah.
We clocked each other. And it was actually a lot of things that was going on. I was actually getting very strong feeling that what was actually going, it was a case of, you're awake. We know you're awake. Yeah. Because this then takes me, because at this stage I'd actually done 2 ayahuasca ceremonies. Now the second one...
You did these in England?
Yes.
Part of your course?
Yes. Separate of course, yeah, but part of it, because I was studying shamanism, shamanic treatments, ways of healing people shamanically, and ayahuasca is a way of healing. It deals with very deep-seated trauma.
But that's now illegal in this country.
Ayahuasca allegedly isn't. It's the DMT. They're saying it's the DMT, but traditionally brewed ayahuasca does have traces of DMT, because the plants used in ayahuasca, one of them, chacruna, does actually have DMT.
Now, what's DMT?
That's
dimethyl tetra.
Yeah. It can be isolated and created artificially, And the strange thing about it is the people who've actually taken in the crystal form, actually most of them report very, very similar experiences. It's not like an acid trip where you're going off with, you know, whatever your experience is. Most people actually have the same as in with the DMT that's actually in the plant. There's a consistency in what people report, you know, the visions, what they see, etc. You know, there is a consistency, like an intelligence behind it. But as I say, at this stage, I'd done some ceremonies.
Okay, we've established now that since you were taking this course, you began to see other things. You'd woken up.
Yeah.
You'd noticed a lot more things happening to your husband.
Yeah.
So what happened with your husband? And
when he found that I was doing the 1 week course, apparently he flipped, he went mad. He phoned loads of my friends, and
this is a different course because
this is the 1 week ayahuasca that I decided to take at the beginning of 2008. This was the end of the marriage, basically. I told him I needed space to sort my head out because I thought I was beginning to lose it. I decided this was the way I was going to sort it, because this was in a way which is what had started it. I'd started seeing things because I'd been studying shamanism. I'd started trying to wake up and make sense of all the madness. And I'd gone in the week. Apparently, from close friends and my family, he went absolutely totally mad. He'd been texting me, begging me not to go on this course, telling me it was something was very, very wrong was going to happen if I went, etc. Now, I had an experience while I was on the course which actually changed everything. It was very, very traumatic, but within the experience, I saw strobe lights, heard white noise, and I had some very, very traumatic imagery involving military personnel, lots of children, women, old people being murdered, blood everywhere.
How were they being murdered without wishing to?
They were being shot. They were being shot by soldiers. The civilians being killed by soldiers.
Now, this is an experience you recalled while doing ayahuasca.
Yeah, it was very, very traumatic. And after that experience,
I mean, is this something part of the Spanish Civil War? I mean, that's
actually during it. No, it felt modern. It felt modern, and during the experience, I was there in a state whereas I actually felt I was witnessing it, but I wasn't sure if the thing that had been responsible for this was me, that was taking me over, was me myself, something that was taking me over, or something totally different. But I felt as if my mind had been totally and utterly fractured, and I was responsible for all these people being murdered by these soldiers. And I was watching it from a point of total responsibility. It was extremely horrific.
And this led to what?
Well, divorce papers. When I got back, my husband, who I was supposed to be reconciling with, had divorce papers. And
so he divorced you?
He divorced me. And the reason he divorced me was because I'd taken ayahuasca. He didn't state that. He told me that if I wanted to continue studying shamanism with anybody other than the person I was studying with, fine. And then he asked me if I'd taken ayahuasca, and when I told him he had, there was no more conversation. He divorced me. Now, I have actually since found out that ayahuasca actually breaks the programming. It breaks the hive mind mentality. If it's used by a shaman who is actually using it in the correct way, because ayahuasca can actually pick up patterns of control if it's used by somebody who wants to control others.
And do you believe that's why they want to ban it?
Yes, I do.
Because it can break the hive mind and therefore the global mind control.
The indigenous people, the shamans in Amazonia, actually state that the ayahuasca, madre ayahuasca, is the plant that protects them from the aliens. And
what aliens are these?
I wouldn't know whether they were the draconians or whether they were the greys, but there is a long culture and history in Africa, in the Amazon basin, in all the indigenous tribes of aliens who are trying to control the human race and control the way that people think. They have a hive mentality. They work on a hive mentality. They have like a slave hierarchy. And the indigenous tribes believe very strongly that the plants... explain, ayahuasca, the DMT in a plant actually acts as a parasite repellent.
Right.
It's like an insecticide. Now, when the plant works with human body, it acts as an insecticide for ourselves. And the indigenous tribes see these aliens as being parasites.
Yeah.
The human version of a tick or a flea or anything else.
Yeah.
That's how they see it.
So naturally that plant would get rid of
It does.
parasites and things that they'd pick up in the jungle anyway. Is that one reason why they take
Well, they
it?
do, yeah. Well, actually, the shamans take it for the connection you get to your higher self, which is why it can't be used. Why they said they can't control you with it, because it takes you outside the hive mind. It takes you to your connection, your purpose for being here, not what somebody else's agenda may be. You see beyond the lies. I mean, after... your whole perception of reality changes once you step outside the hive mind. For somebody who wants you to be in the box, it's actually quite dangerous. Which is to say why I truly believe they're trying to ban it. Up until 2010, the ayahuasca, chacruna, all the plants with the DMT was actually on the permitted list by the United Nations. In fact, it's actually stated that ayahuasca plus all plants that control and contain DMT are not on the controlled list. It's actually in the notes. As in, what's happened, I don't think it's so much as it's got to the stage where people's fear and perceptions of being controlled have caught them. It's almost in a trap. They can't see any further than survival, and the survival isn't just necessary for them. They are prepared to virtually give anything up for the good of the state. I mean, this is part of the ongoing thing. Give up your liberties for the good of the state. Give up this for the good of the state.
This is sort of a straight out of 1984
Exactly,
situation. But are there any signatures? Are there any wake-up call signatures that you could attribute to people, which would say, that person's living in a hive mind? Any particular characteristics physically that you could observe with them, apart from the apathy that you just mentioned?
Actually, no. Not that I can think of on the top of my head.
It's only,
actually.
in other words, it's only people who are waking up notice the others are in a hive mind.
I think so,
state.
yeah, because it's not something you notice yourself, is it? And to quite honest, look, when you are actually in a hive mind, you still think you're seeing objectively and outside of it.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
I mean, you will
It's
actually get quite violently aggressive about somebody suggesting that you might be being under a level of control. In fact, to quite honest, I think I'm more prepared to say that, yes, I'm being controlled, than the majority of people who are being seriously controlled. Because the fact is, I can look objectively here and say, well, yeah, that's control, but I'm still having my strings pulled here. I'm still reacting. I know there's still controls going on over me. A meeting with Matt was set up by a friend of mine called Lee, who actually recommended me come to speak to you. When I went to see Matt, he got out his little toys and he checked me over after our conversation.
You're referring to his meters and things, which he also used on Dave Marrow.
Yes. Now, the reason he did that was because we recognised each other. I'd never met Matt before, but I recognised him, and I said to him after about an hour of chatting, look, I really feel I know you. I recognise you from someone. He said, well, actually, I do recognise you, and I remember where I recognise you.
And where was that?
He told me he'd seen me on board a spaceship. He said at the time he was being taken for genetic material for the breeding program, but he said that I wasn't. He didn't know why I was there, but it wasn't. Sorry, excuse me, the room's tipping. He said.
What do you mean the room is tipping?
The room's just started tipping. I've started just feeling very, very sick, and the room just tipped.
In other words, you have a dimensional intrusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
You're having buzzing in the head and all that sort of stuff.
well, I was just just this pressure here and here,
Yeah.
and the room just went boom.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Matt.
That's it. Talking
Yeah.
about Matt and talking about the alien thing.
Yeah.
We had a bit of a dip.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
we've got 13 minutes left,
Yeah.
so let's
So we'll
just
finish this.
let's
finish where I
this.
started.
Please.
Yeah, so he said he didn't know why I was on this spaceship, but he knew I was there for something different, a purpose different to him. And at that stage, he decided that, he agreed to actually check me for microchips.
When was this?
This would have been about 18 months ago.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
We've interviewed Matt on a couple of occasions for the Basis series and one for the AMMACH
Yeah.
project. And the AMMACH project was last year, around about February this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2012. Yeah.
Well, he checked me and he found 8 sites in my body that were actually emitting frequencies.
Where were they?
There was one on the back of this leg. There was...
That's your left
That's
leg.
my left thigh.
Your
It's
left
up
thigh.
here, in here.
Okay, yeah.
There was...
Let's just
a
adjust the
couple-
camera for that 1 second.
Okay, I'm taking the...
And
It
where that was?
It was actually up under the shoulder blade. It started
Okay,
buzzing
just,
after...
let's just, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was another one
Okay,
on the other shoulder.
could you just do that
Sorry,
again?
another one on the other shoulder.
Yeah, and the back
Okay.
of the first time.
It was up under this shoulder blade.
Yeah, and the next one.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, and so the head, that was it. They were actually positively buzzing. With the metal detector, he actually found far more sites. In fact, I appeared to be riddled with metal. Now, I did... for the last 2 weeks, I've been doing body electronics, the point holding, and after one particularly painful session where the energies were very, very high, and actually felt as if I was having a nail being put through my foot, I felt very strange afterwards. So when I got home, I actually checked myself with a bug detector I actually bought myself, because I've been trying to burn these things off with magnets.
Now, what kind of magnets are those that you can burn off? These
The
are
magnets,
very, very powerful.
The neodymium magnets, the powerful ones, but I don't think I was using big enough ones.
Yeah, you can get them
Also-
off hard drives. Second, you can
Yeah.
smash them out of the motors of hard drives. They're very, very strong if you want to get them cheap.
Yeah.
And
Matt did actually point out, though, you do have to get them all at the same time because they can bring themselves back online if you miss any.
right.
Which I don't know what
So
was
maybe-
actually happening with me, but I wasn't having any success burning these things out. They just seemed to fade out, and then within a couple of days they were back on again.
Now, how do you know they faded out?
Well, because they weren't picking up. I wasn't picking them up with the bug detector, but then they'd come back up again.
Now, can you describe this bug detector so if somebody
It's
wanted one?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's the one that Matt uses. Oh, grief!
Well, we'll get that later.
I can't remember, but it's the one. I got the
Okay,
same
I'm
one
gonna
as
sit
Matt
back.
uses. Yeah. Because he actually went through and explained the frequencies. I haven't got a mind like that, but he actually explained the frequencies, etc. So I got the same one.
I think
Now,
the frequencies are something in the megahertz,
Yeah.
30 megahertz range, but we can leave that. Those are
Yeah.
those details.
Yeah.
So you are riddled with implants.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of them because you don't know where to find them all.
no. And I used this point holding session.
What's
and
point holding?
That's the channeling of high level energy through points that are consistent with organs and the glandular system. And so I had it. Actually, was at the time we were working on the solar plexus point, which is based to do with issues of control. I was in tremendous pain. I mean, I was crying where I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I felt very peculiar, very different. So I actually checked with the bug detector, not a beep, nothing. And it's been like that for 2 weeks now.
So you got the magnetic solution and you got
Yeah.
the point.
Yeah, the point holding will burn them
point,
out.
Right,
Yeah.
point holding, right.
Yeah, which is great news.
Now, how does that work? How does point holding work?
It's very high energy. You're channeling through.
You have to do that
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Well, we do in groups. We usually, with the teacher, with my partner, he runs a course every summer, 2 weeks.
So
we
how does
actually
somebody
work in
else
groups.
get on a course like this as we run it?
Say you can speak to Peter, or there's
Peter who?
Aziz.
Peter Aziz?
Yeah.
And is there a website or something that people can go
Yes,
to?
Aziz Shamanism. But he said there are other people who do his students, and sometimes they have like groups they'll meet. You give a $5 basically because they have to pay for a hall or whatever.
Yeah.
But then they'll come together as a group and they'll do point holding to learn it and
now,
to
is that
work it.
specifically being used to target the implants?
No, it's to target the whole person. However, the implants actually affect the whole person, so it's a very pleasant side effect.
Right. Does this have any connection with Aboriginal healing?
It's kahuna.
Kahuna.
So it's the Hawaiian.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay,
Alara.
So Alara. Now, but we close on this AMMACH recording. Tell us all about Alara, the great Alara Blackwell.
Yeah, it was her testimony that actually led me to contact you. Because she was talking about the experiences she was having, as in the dreams again. I didn't tell you, because we hadn't covered that. She was having dreams of actually being in military operations, but actually being in somebody and being aware and watching things.
Yes.
I had the same experiences start happening around the same time as having these like future dreams. Those dreams stopped, and then I started having other ones where I was jumping out of aircraft.
You were inside somebody else's
I was
body.
doing it. I was inside somebody else. Somebody was jumping out of an aircraft. And
With a parachute or without?
With a parachute,
right,
yeah.
Because some of the super soldier people claim they don't need parachutes.
Well, so I was inside somebody who was jumping out of an aircraft. Well, I'm assuming it's with a parachute.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that. I didn't know people jumped out of planes without
Yeah, super soldiers don't need
I'm
parachutes.
actually assuming that.
So you can recall what type of aircraft? Can you recall any kind of military insignia or thing which would lead you to
No, because I said I was absolutely dumbfounded because I couldn't understand where these dreams were coming from. As I say, it was having military training, jumping out of an aircraft. There was another one where actually I was in Washington in the... and this is very bizarre, and I've been trying to trace this to see if this is actually possible. But I was in the aquarium in Washington, and in the dream there's an outside part that leads to the sea.
And what actually does that lead to?
The open ocean.
Right.
This is. I'm still trying to check to see. I know. Yeah. I actually checked the aquarium, and it is close to the ocean.
Right.
But I'm still trying to check to see if because I know in Karunya there is one of the outside pools actually is directly fed by the sea. So sea life, is actually fed by fresh seawater.
Yeah. Okay.
Because actually in the experience, we were chasing somebody who used that as a way of leaving Washington.
Now, who was we?
I was a group of other people.
Can you identify any of the other people? What do they look like? What sort of clothing did they wear?
They were military. They weren't uniformed military. They weren't out of uniform military, but they were military. They were. And
have you met any of those other people?
Not as far as I know. Mind you, I've met people when I was living in Spain. I remember one occasion I met somebody who actually called me by my kid name, and I recognised him, and it was actually very, very disturbing because I had never seen him before in my life, but I recognised him, and he called me by my kid name, and he was what I would call a suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was out of place in the wrong place, in the wrong clothes, everything else, and he actually called me by my nickname I only had for
So basically he broke
family.
protocol by doing that.
Well, I actually think that he was
deliberately
doing it to elicit some kind of reaction.
Right. It's been a good exposure of this material, and thanks probably to Alara and Matt Todd and Aziz, the name?
Peter.
Mm-hmm. And thank you very much for coming this way to give your story to the AMMACH project. And good luck and God bless. And hopefully your testimony and your brave words will help others to seek the truth. And if you ever see little people doing that to you, hold on to your jacket, because one of them took one of my jackets off.
Really?
Yeah. And the police actually said don't pursue this. So with that, it's a good night from me, and guesting in for the lovely Joanne. Normally I'm behind the cameras, and it's hot as hell on a strange day in the summertime in England where the sun's actually been shining. And thank you, Sam, for coming this great distance.
Thanks, Miles.
Okay. Good night.
Total and utter breakdown. And then one night I had an experience where I was virtually like I was separate from myself, and the me that was outside me looked at me and said, you change something now, because if you continue the way you're going and you don't decide you want to live, you will die tonight. And that night I actually had a very violent row that finished my relationship with my then boyfriend, which involved throwing bottles around the kitchen. It was very violent, and it could have very easily have ended up in severe violence. But that night I actually chose, I decided I wanted to change something. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to die. I wanted.
Do you think your partner at that time was influencing you in your...
Well, he was feeding me the drugs and selling me the drugs and stuff, yeah. And he was a very, very bad boy. Yeah, very bad boy. He was involved in drug running. He had contacts in the IRA and stuff. Yeah, so it was quite bad. After that, when I decided I wanted to live, that's when the voices in the head started. And I would have one voice telling me that I was useless, I should kill myself, and the other voice saying, no, it's fine, ignore it, it'll go away, ignore it, you'll be fine. And in the end, I decided I'd just have to still up, because at this stage I'd actually just bought the house next door to these controlling people. I was working in sales, and so I sold my house and I went over to stay with my mother, who was in Spain, which is where I ended up going on the Camino to Santiago and meeting my husband.
And you're saying that then the husband was not... It was not
and it was very, very, I mean, nightmares, very, very vivid nightmares, I mean, violent ones. And when I got to my late teens, I never used to remember my nightmares. I used to just wake up, bolt upright in bed screaming. It was quite shocking for my boyfriend at the time.
This is painful, and I don't want you to...
I've done a lot of work on this.
You've done a lot of work?
Yeah. I've done a lot of point holding, and I've done a lot of works on some of this stuff.
Okay, so you've had these traumatic experiences.
Very traumatic dreams. And, yeah, very traumatic experiences. So by the age of 22, I was 22, I actually went out and I started taking drugs. And to be quite honest, I lost, I think, about 8 years of my life, and there was very strange things happening then. It's strange. I did start off taking acid, and it never did anything for me. It just took me to a place where as I was more centred, actually, and I used to be more aware of the energies around me, but I never hallucinated. I only hallucinated once on acid, and I can actually honestly say the night I hallucinated, I'm not actually had nightmares virtually all my life, but the nightmares then just got more extreme. I couldn't handle it.
Can you talk about those nightmares briefly?
I used to have, from the ages of about 12, 13 onwards, I used to have nightmares of running away from something chasing me. One of the one I used to have was tearing my face off so I couldn't be recognised and trying to hide. Another one which I had very, very vivid, I can actually remember in detail to this day. I was about 13, I think I had with this one. I was hiding in a compartment in a train, and I knew it was pointless hiding because I knew there was something in my head which meant that they'd find me, they were tracking me. And
what
then
made you think about that? What brought that on?
I have no idea. It came in the dreams, but in the dream they actually started drilling through my head. And so I woke up in terror because they were actually drilling into my third eye. Convinced I was hallucinating because I saw my partner with a skull face over him, and then 2 years later he died of cancer. So I'm not exactly sure that I was really hallucinating that night, but it felt like hallucinating. It was really quite shocking.
So the bottom line is, if you've been taking drugs, how have you been able to make the distinction between your higher spiritual awareness and being able to see remote viewers and things?
This is actually, I gave up drugs and I stopped them all in my late 20s. I had an experience where this is where I really lost it. My partner at the time had just died of cancer, and I was actually involved with some very, very bizarre controlling people.
Can you talk about those?
Yeah, I can talk about them.
What do you mean by bizarre controlling people?
Well, things were happening like I'd want to go away for a weekend with a man and my passport would go missing. People would be interested in pursuing friendships with me, and all of a sudden they would disappear, and I would find out later, some years later, what they'd been told to make them disappear. They were very controlling. These people were actually controlling my life and who I mixed with without me being aware of it. But this is actually while I was living in the home of this particular person that I actually saw the alien by the bed. But I knew I was spiraling out of control. I was going into severe depression. I was having panic attacks. At this stage, I'd started having voices in my head. I was going to an
apparently random event.
No, it wasn't. I was totally and utterly obsessed about being here, and here at particular dates. This is where we had to sleep. This is where we had to sleep. The other parties,
you mean specific hotels?
Or specific refuges, yeah. Because there's like hostels on the Camino. You pay very little money to stay in there overnight. There were dormitories and everyone eats together. So it means where you meet people. You really do interact. And I was
had to
convinced,
stay at particular ones.
Yeah, I was totally obsessed with it.
Now, you were obsessed with it?
No, I was obsessed. Yeah, it was me. I was totally and utterly obsessed. Now, actually, strangely, there were very strange things happening when I first went over to Spain. For instance, I was thrown downstairs by an unseen being just after I arrived.
Just the old sort of being thrown downstairs by the unseen being.
It was really, this is sound really cookie, but I went upstairs one morning to get, because I lived in one part of the house, my mother lived in another. And I went to get breakfast in her kitchen, and I had a voice in my head saying, "Be careful on the stairs." And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm always careful on the stairs. I went up the first flight of stairs carrying a bowl of cereal and a glass in the other hand. And at the top of those stairs, I had another voice in my head saying, "Be careful on the stairs." So, yeah, I'm half asleep here and I'm pissed off. I'm fine. I can climb a set of stairs. I got to the top of the stairs and there were marble stairs, 8 flights, and I suddenly felt this push in my chest. And it was like a push.